and welcome to this episode of Dude, What's the Bid? My name's Kevin Hill, here with Casey Larkin, as always, with Farelanes. How are you doing today, Casey?
Doing well, Kev. Happy Thursday. How are you?
I'm doing good, yeah. And we have a special guest here in-house, as always, but right now from Axel, it is Dhruv Gupta. How are you doing today, Dhruv?
What's going on, Kevin? How's it going, Casey? Thanks for having me. Always fun to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So, we're going to go around the world in freight, I suppose, and talk a little bit about rates and what's going on in trucking. And I think we'll probably talk a little bit about AI and automation when it comes to the industry. But with that, what's in the data, Casey?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the data. Seen some interesting things coming out lately, but no, it's interesting. I mean, I just met Dhruv earlier this week. We were introduced through a mutual contact. We share the same advertising agency. But anywho, no, it's glad to make the connection earlier this week. Had a great conversation on Tuesday, and glad that you're able to join us. Hopefully, you didn't have to move anything around. But Kev, have you? I guess you guys have spoken at some point in the past as well, right? You've got the long-standing relationship here of the bunch.
Yeah, and just to add to that real quick, Casey and I are also getting married on Friday. So, shotgun wedding.
Pretty quickly.
But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
Now, who's getting married? What?
Met on Tuesday. We're heading to Vegas tomorrow. We're going to get married.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, okay. heading no better way to get and where to get married than Vegas.
Exactly. This is your invite, Kev. You can come too.
I'm trying to think who introduced the two of us. I think it was Mark Manera. Dr. Mark. That
sounds
Manera,
right. Dr. Mark Manera.
Yeah. Dr. Mark Manera over Off Shift. I think it was.
I think so. They're doing some really cool work. They're doing some really cool stuff. I've been seeing all the squats. Yeah, all those videos. I love it.
Yeah. I finally met Mark face to face in Kansas City at the BCS Broker Carrier Summit. It was good. We sat down and had a beer together.
That's awesome. Funny story. Mark and I met. Excuse me, Dr. Mark.
Dr. Manera. Yeah.
I was. It was after Freight Waves, like the conference in November. I was at the Chattanooga airport in my grunge phase. Don't talk to me when I'm traveling. I'm in sweatpants. Got my sweatshirt. I'm watching something stupid on YouTube, and I was like eating my eighth slice of pizza for that day or something like that. And Mark walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, were you just at Freight Waves?" It starts this incredible conversation. What a hustler! I love that guy.
Yeah, he is. He's a hustler. He's great, and yeah, the food selection at the Chattanooga airport is unlimited.
No, of course, a truly magical airport.
He didn't chirp you for the eighth slice of pizza, did he?
No, I never. Don't get in between me and my pizza.
Me either, man. I think I actually met Mark at that same conference in Chattanooga last year. TI performing, and I don't know. It's cool. He seems like I think I also met the truck parking club guys. It seems like some cool companies coming out these days to kind of help make life on the road a little bit easier for these truck drivers.
Yeah. It sucks.
It's a tough gig, right? There's nowhere to eat, nowhere to park, sleep. But I don't know. Maybe that's a good segue. Dhruv, how did you get into this industry? I know you probably had some opportunities or dipped your toe into some other industries, but would love to learn a little bit about how you got into freight. And I think what you guys are doing at API to help make communication more efficient, right, between brokers and carriers is some cool stuff. So man.
Yeah. So the long and short of it is when I was in college, I basically went to college to study transportation planning and computer science, like the intersection of that, and spent several years just learning as much as I could about anything I could get my hands on. Right, in both on the engineering side, I was particularly focused on optimization and AI and building like systems. And then on the transportation side, I was primarily focused on logistics, delivery, transit, and I think most specifically, at the time I was spending a lot of time on bikes and scooter sharing. That was really hot at the time, urban delivery, that kind of thing. And then since graduating, I've just been in logistics for years. Spent a few years out of college in the bikes and scooter sharing space. Quickly discovered that that market's let's just say you can buy the entire company of Bird for less than the value of a house nowadays. It's a tough time. It's a tough time.
Are they still operating?
I think they're still out there. I think they had great scooters.
I fell off a Bird scooter on Monday.
About that. Oh yeah. I forgot that was a Bird scooter, dude.
Did.
Hope you're doing okay, man.
What was the other one? You had Birds. You had Bird, and there was another scooter place, or a couple, but Lime, yeah.
Lime was the big one. I think they're operationally profitable now. Spin was out there. They've changed hands a few times. GM acquired them, and a few other folks. So it's a super cool. I think the title of my college thesis, actually my undergraduate thesis, was bike sharing and scooter sharing should be transit, as opposed to anything else. And so I really feel like governments need to take over, these systems and treat them as public transit, as opposed to, private companies that try to throw people off their scooters so that they pay them more or something. Which must be what happened, Casey. There's no way you actually, you messed up.
User error.
That's yeah, and so since then I've just been in logistics, and things got bigger and bigger. It started with bikes and scooter sharing, and now onto trucks. Next I'll be onto spaceships or something. I don't know what gets bigger than that. Yeah, but it's been fun. I think we started building integrations into ELDs and telematics devices. That was kind of how we got our foot in the door, because we saw that problem pretty clearly. People, we kept talking to folks that wanted that kind of data. And since then, we realized that there's just, people don't just want the dot on the map. They want to do something actionable with it. And so we started working with freight brokers that took that dot on the map and said, hey, I love this. This is helpful, but can you also reach out to the carrier and figure out what their actual ETA is, because I don't know what their hours are. I don't know, if they need to take a break or whatever. And so we were like, okay, yeah, we can do that. They said, yeah, the best way to do that is actually through our inbox. We can reach the dispatcher, or we can send them a text message. That's what we need you to do. Cool. Okay, we'll integrate with the inbox. Actually, you know what? I don't want to go to your dashboard. I want to see it in the inbox. Can you do that? And so we started to get pulled closer and closer into what we're building now. And that experience has primarily started to look like we build the sidebar experience in your inbox, where we integrate directly with the conversations that you're having. We'll read them, we'll try to understand them, classify and categorize them for you, and then help you take actions on them. So across the life cycle of the load, if it's quoting, then we'll connect to someone like a Farelanes or Green Screens or something like that, and share those quotes out with you. Or we'll reach out to the carriers that you work with through your routing guide and try to get quotes from them. If you're so that way you actually have a truck in hand. If you're going through a load board, then we'll parse responses there, validate them through my carrier portal or highway or something like that, so that you can say, hey, this is a legit carrier that I actually do want to work with, or they're already in network, like your dentist or whatever. And then you can make decisions based on that and get quotes from them, and so that's just on the quoting side. We also have tools on the scheduling, tracking, as well as KPI metrics and reporting side. And so, across the life cycle of a load, we're trying to do things that just make your life easier.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the device that you held up?
this is not actually an ELD. It kind of
Yeah.
like, to someone who doesn't know, it kind of looks like one. It's just an OBD2 diagnostic device.
Okay, so you plug that into a car, like okay,
Yeah.
and it reads it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Does that hook into your phone?
Yeah.
As well? Okay.
This one's Bluetooth, so it'll connect
Yeah.
connect to your phone or whatever, and give you all the diagnostics.
I bought one of those for my car. Not from you, of course. But one of the commercial, or the passenger ones, and I've never been able to hook it up to my Bluetooth to my phone. I don't know why. It's just, but it's something I would like to know too, right? I want to know my engine, know what my engine's doing, and get notifications, and make sure that everything is running in tip-top shape.
Yeah. I mean, it's so the data is so valuable and so hard to get, right? Like manufacturers that are outside of Class 6 to Class 8 trucking, and then a few other standard sets of vehicles, intentionally obfuscate that information or create firewalls around it. But most of it is security by confusion or security by obfuscation. And so we were actually, like, part of the way we got into this in the first place was we were working with a national lab, Oak Ridge National Labs, out in Knoxville. And they were building some machine learning algorithms that would, like, reverse engineer the OBD code. So basically they would, like, go in, watch you drive, read a bunch of data, and then spit out, like, okay, here's the Rosetta Stone, or the Duolingo for this car. But that sucks. It's a pretty hard process. We started doing some other stuff.
So we have a question here. Right. Yeah. So ELDs are an interesting space, government mandated, highly fragmented market. I can attest to that. I haven't looked in a few years, but I have some thoughts on that. Yeah. Which ELDs are most commonly used in the trucking logistics space?
Yeah. I can go through, like, just thinking about the data that we pull. Samsara, Motive, Verizon, Geotab, those stand out as the largest. There's a few that you wouldn't expect, right? Like a Fleet Complete, eRoad, very popular in Canada. Isaac, Zonar, they're all, like, relatively large, but the market share drops. Not only does it drop exponentially, but even some of the largest, some of our data here is, some of our, like, national market share data is a little bit skewed, but 12%, 11% at best. And these are multi-billion-dollar companies. Yeah. So they're making a lot of money, but they're not commanding a lot of market share. It's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I remember. So the mandate goes into effect late 2017, maybe January 1st, 2018. And then the second stage of that was in April of 2018. I remember it really well because I was doing carrier lists at the time, and we were collecting information. We were calling carriers all the time, and part of our survey was, are you ELD compliant yet? And we came out with a weekly survey, a running count of a percentage. And 90 days before the mandate goes into effect, only about a third of carriers had ELDs in place. People are still running. They're waiting till last minute, and there's this gold rush of ELD marketed companies out there. I won't say manufacturers, because a lot of them were just white labeled. Someone else was manufacturing those, and you had a lot of people out selling ELDs. And I think on the it was a self-registered compliant. There were 100 something, maybe 120 to 150 different ELD companies, and everyone said there'd be a lot of consolidation. I really haven't checked, but as you said, Drew, I mean, you have this core group at top, maybe a dozen, right, that have some sort of market share, and then it drops off exponentially after that. So you have a lot of smaller players out there. It was a complete mess in 2017, 2018, and I think the market's probably kind of cleared out a little bit, and it's much more of a, I wouldn't say mature market, but it kind of is a mature market. If you're replacing contracts at this point. I
mean, you'd be surprised by how sticky these devices are,
Yes.
because it's so hard to literally pull them out and replace them and get everybody to change their process. And as a result of that, you've got these really interesting communities around certain ELDs or certain telematics devices in general, right? There are, for example, there are ELDs that are just for Ukrainians, ELDs that are just for Eastern European folks, or just for Punjabi or Indian folks, that are just for Chicago drivers or folks that drive around Winnipeg, Canada, or something like that.
Yep.
We see it all. In fact, I saw one that is just for Trump supporters, exclusively for patriots. So they're getting political now. So
does it work in New York or California?
Dude, I think it actually, what it does is it hacks into your GPS and reroutes you out of New York or California.
Is it called make ELDs great again?
I think it's MAGA fleet, something like that.
Really?
I don't. You weren't that far off. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The ELD market is interesting. So when you say stickiness, I can see that, right? Because if you think about it on a freight broker side, like TMS systems, right?
Yeah,
very sticky. Once you get hooked on to really any program out there, once you learn that program, whatever software you're using, you don't really want to switch, because then you have to relearn everything, and that's from like MailChimp to something else to anything that you use. You just have to relearn the little intricacies of that, and no one really wants to do that. And if you're getting your telematics data from somewhere, wherever you go, it's going to be completely different. TMS being in the freight brokerage world, right? Your TMS, it's hard to switch off of it, because number one, it's so important. It's your central hub, right?
Yep.
So ELDs, telematics, or
Yep.
follow within that category. And number two is it could be better, or it might not be better once it's implemented and in there. So it's a hard decision to make.
Yeah, and TMS is a great example. We work with one partner that, look, and no shade, right? Great technology for the time, but the AS400, I don't need to say anything. I don't need to say
Yeah,
anything.
I know, right?
Yeah, and but just think about how disruptive it is to your business to switch, right? Like, even if maybe you can make the switch in an instant, right? Like, everything transfers over, you're all set. Maybe you can do that. Even then, it's going to take a few weeks for people to figure out, how the system works, catch up on productivity. And, that's a pretty big if we predicated the whole thing on. So it's, once you're in, you're in. And I think it's really difficult to do that. In fact, to the point where we see a decent number of fleets that have multiple telematics devices on board that are, they acquired some other fleet, or they kind of half switched to something more modern from something older. I was talking to the folks at Omnitrax. They have 17 different devices.
Omnitrax,
yeah. It's just how these things go.
Yeah. When you say telematics, right? And I can throw down the word I like the word telematics. It's nice and broad, and I can use it when I know what I'm talking about, and I can use it when I don't know what I'm talking about. It's one of those words. What's your definition? I mean, explain telematics to me.
Yeah. I actually have maybe a slightly more narrow definition of telematics than other folks. I basically just think I think of it almost exclusively in the sense of IoT. If you have some sort of device on the edge that's connected to the cloud in some way, whether it's cellular or Bluetooth through your phone or something like that, that allows me to bundle in dash cams and like shipment sensors like Tive or trailer trackers or something like that. But I don't include Project 44, Macro Point, or anything like that there. And so I'm just thinking of IoT devices, and just thinking of that like scope. I think when people think of track and trace, though, the reality is people aren't really looking for a dot on the map. They're looking for an ETA, which is different. I know that if I live in New York, if I punched in directions to my parents' house near Washington, D.C., it would take me roughly 3.5 hours driving straight. But I also know that it's going to take me, half an hour to pack. I'm going to stop at Dunkin' Donuts on the way there, even though I shouldn't. And maybe I'll get stuck in traffic. Like your ETA is totally different from your actual point on the map destination. And I think that's, just going back to this new product that we're building. That's the genesis of Beacon, where we realized that the data we were providing was not actionable. It was usable but not actionable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. The dot in the map doesn't really matter. Right?
Yeah.
I want to know the reason. Go ahead, Casey.
Like, what's the implication of the dot on the map? What's that mean for my business? Like, how does that make my life easier? The dot on the map could slow down, right? You may have to stop at Dunks 3 times between now and then because I don't know, he went to college in Massachusetts, like Drubb did, and fell victim to the the Dunkin' brand. But anyways, so something that I have been seeing recently is question whether or not the market's actually heating up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I heard you say on Tech Bro Tuesday earlier this week that a lot of the folks that you're speaking with are kind of starting to indicate that maybe things are heating up. We've got folks like, Jason Miller out of Michigan State saying, hey, let's, hold our horses here. Maybe it's Q2 2025. Did see an interesting post from Tanner DeHart. I don't know if you guys follow him on Twitter or not, but we used to work with him at Freightways. Mm-hmm. See if I can pull that up here. You're starting to see tender rejections.
I saw this, yeah.
Bouncing. LA, Ontario, Atlanta, Dallas, or is that like Ontario, California?
Yeah, Ontario, California.
Yeah.
I can't read it. What are some of the numbers there? What graph is this? That's national.
National.
Where's it at? Is it over 5%?
Correct, 5.16, and it's at 6 or 7% in these big markets here: Dallas, LA, Ontario, Atlanta. We're starting to see certainly some of these equipment types, with higher highs, lower lows, maybe confirming bottoms. Pulled up dry van Dallas to Houston here, and kind of indicating that maybe things are heating up. The other thing that Tanner talked about in that post is like, we got hurricane season coming, right?
Yep.
Things are heating up, and certainly I remember from our days at Freightwaves, hurricanes are hottest topic in the freight market,
Yeah, the way I see it is, you want to peg it on industrial for trucking, at least. You want to peg it on industrial demand in the U.S., right? Like, imports are a part of that. Consumer confidence is a part of that. I think we've seen bumps like this before. Even just looking at the tender rejection graph, right? Like, we've seen fluctuations like that before, and then it fell even more, or it fell back to where it was.
Dead cat bounce.
That's right. Plus, you're going to see an increase in consumption in the summer. Those are like pretty natural seasonal trends. All that said, we saw produce, increase pretty dramatically, like in early Q2. I think it's just too early to tell. I think that's all it is. It's too early to tell whether this is like a bump in the road or whether this is like a true sign of growth. I think it seems to me like the Freightwaves folks and Craig Fuller and those are like planting drawing a line in the stand, and they were right the first time. So it might be right this time, but the reality is I think it's probably going to fall somewhere in the middle, and people are going to see the impact at different times. We still haven't seen the supply side adjustment we haven't fully seen the supply side adjustment that would bring those rates back to normal. But large carriers are also saying, hey, those rates are coming back to something more manageable. So we'll see. I mean, I think the reality is it's not going to be like there's a switch flipped and then tomorrow everybody's making money. It's probably going to be more like Q1 where people feel like post holidays, okay, we're in a place that's adjusted a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't bet against Craig and the calls from Sonar. They're consistently right multiple times, and I would say it's not off to the races though, right? The bottom's in. It's going to come off the bottom, which I mean is kind of strange in a way. I just saw Tanner's chart there. 5.16% O-try. It's above 5%, right? It hasn't been consistently above 5% in a long, long time. If you can get up to 6 or 7%, then the market's turned. The market's turned, and it is more of a normalized market, right? It's not rebounding up sharply or anything, but the market has turned, right? You go from about 3% O-try to 6% O-try. It's not a great market, but it is certainly not the market we've been living through for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's
objects in motion stay in motion kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what they claim.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot more adjustment needed before we see folks being able to breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah. And if you think about it historically, right, a 6% O-try isn't anything to shout about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not 3%, so you doubled off that,
right?
But 6% is as well. If you think about 2021, you're talking 20 to 25% and above O-try. Is crazy. And if you think about like a normalish December in busy season, right, peak season, you're looking at 8 to 10%. I think that's what it was in 2019, right? We hit double digits for that month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about going into, say, the fourth quarter into peak season at 6%, you probably get that bump up to 10% during the peak. And then in January, it's going to fall down to 5 or 6%, which is, again, it's a better market. It's not the drags of everything, but it's nothing to be really all that excited about.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to go out and buy new trucks and say, "Hey, man, the rough times are over."
No.
But it's going to be a little bit better.
Let us have the hope. Let us have the hope.
We're laying out is through, and if we're positive about it, I think that's how we get out. But what are you hearing, Drew, from the C-suite folks that you're talking about? How are they kind of preparing for a potential shift in the market? One thing that we heard a couple of weeks ago, Kevin, I think you heard this from a couple of CEOs in the space, is like they're worried they don't have any carrier reps on the floor today that were there when the market was tight in 2021. And if things get tight, what do we need to have in place to, make sure that we can find trucks? That was one kind of narrative, but would love to hear kind of what you're hearing on your end, Drew.
I can corroborate that. It's not just carrier reps, it's also customer reps, like folks that aren't used to, being slammed or like being, getting in at 5 a.m. because they have to, there's definitely some concern around that. There's concern around training. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of folks hire pretty aggressively now, because they can ease people in as opposed to trying new people out when things are crazy and there's no time to train or there's no time to acclimate or learn. Which I think it's a good bet. I think you're also seeing a flip side of people that are deciding, look, I can't keep hiring and firing.
Right.
I can't keep, hiring 30 people Sorry.
Too much turnover. We know this market's cyclical.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, I can't keep hiring 30 people today and firing 40 people tomorrow and then hiring 50 people the day after. Right. I just can't keep up with that. It's unreasonable. I'm burning through people. Not everybody lives in Chicago where there's 10 million people who want your job. Right. That's not, it's not how it goes. And brokers, I think, are finding that, let's be honest, right? In sales, remote is just not as effective as, the vibe that you get, the energy that you get when you're surrounded by the people that are also doing it, plus traveling out to customers. And so we're seeing folks that are investing in software, whether it's ours or whether it's others, to increase the capacity of individual people, right? On the whether it's a tool like Farelanes, whether it's a tool like Parade, or ours to build operational capacity or coding capacity. There's I think that's where we're seeing people's eyes turn with the buzzwords of AI and things like that, let alone like the actual value of those. You're seeing folks get asked the question, what's your AI strategy? And then people have to answer it. Let me get back to you. And my AI strategy was to use ChatGPT to come up with an AI strategy. So it's been it's been a lot of like, how do we make sure that when we do go through this cycle again, because for every large economic cycle, for every macroeconomic cycle, there's 3 freight economic cycles. We don't want to get caught flat-footed.
Sure.
No, you don't. You don't. And interesting fun fact. I've been doing brush fast research for about a year now. It skews more toward director level and above contacts that I have in my database and freight brokerages. And I have scrubbed about 15% of those initial leads or leads throughout the year off the list or recycle that. That they're not valid anymore, right? So it gives you a sense of the turnover in the industry is on, say, manager level and above. You're looking at about a 15% turnover just in that class each year, and that's probably a good 12-month figure. So when you say that's your leadership coming in and out at 15%. Your brokers on the floor, your carrier sales reps on the floor is going to be higher than that. And that's what you see in transportation throughout and logistics, but in freight brokerage especially, it's a high churn industry. And one of the reasons why they don't have carrier sales reps from 2021 or customer sales reps from 2021, right, is that they're either at different places or they're out of the industry altogether.
I mean, just think about it, right? Like the skills that you develop as a hardened carrier sales rep, customer sales rep, or even as a leader, they're replicable everywhere, right? Like, you're learning specific freight jargon and stuff, but you're also learning how to sell and manage in probably one of the hardest industries in the economy. And so if you can do that here, you can do that for a tech company, or you can do it for Dunder Mifflin or something like that. Right. You can
very transferable skills.
Right. Exactly.
And it is, I mean, I've sold a lot of things in my life, selling to shippers, freight brokerage, opportunities or whatever, right? Freight brokerage was by far the most difficult sell I've ever faced, right? Getting in the door, getting through the process, and then actually delivering something.
So much competition. How do you differentiate?
Yeah, exactly. How do you, and this is something that we always talk about, on different shows and stuff, is how do you differentiate yourself in a phone call?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be saying, I'm dedicated to you. I won't sleep 24 hours a day, yada, yada, yada. Well, anyone can say it. How do you actually show it in a phone call? Demonstrate you're different. It's very tough.
Confirm their pain, ask some begging questions, have a hypothesis, and figure out where you can make their life a little bit easier. But you're right, it's hard, man, especially 10 other guys thinking the same thing that you are.
Yeah,
I mean, those 10 other guys are calling that same prospect every single day at least, right?
Yeah.
And it's just pounded.
And that's also why I think the difference between a good brokerage and a damn good brokerage, I don't know if this show is PG, but is the relationships that you build and cultivate. Because the easiest way to land new customers is someone goes up to him and says, "Hey, you should just run your freight with Casey and Kevin. Like they'll do a good job." Every time you complain, and that type of word of mouth, that type of meeting people, being good to them, I think that's how you grow a large brokerage. But it's also why I think you're slowly starting to see brokerage get a little bit more concentrated, right? We had an explosion in MCs getting created in COVID, but even that notwithstanding, right? There's still a little bit of, you know what, I don't want to deal with it. Let me just go with CH Robinson. Because I know that like most of the time they'll deliver and they'll deliver just fine. Maybe you have a bad experience and so you go to someone else, but that's not to say you'd have bad experiences with CH Robinson, but you'd have bad experiences with any freight broker. So
you do. You just have bad experiences in the industry. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of how that individual rep handles those bad experiences.
That's right.
Right. And that's who you're doing business with, not necessarily the brand on the door. You get some extras with that sometimes, but day to day, whoever your rep is, whoever's handling your account, whether that's one person or multiple people, how they work with you to solve all the issues and problems that arise is what really matters. And whether it's CH Robinson or one of the other 27,000 brokerage MCs out there, it does one man band doesn't matter. It's how they handle your problems.
Yeah. And again, like that's why we're building a lot of the tooling that we're building, because I think the way that you can dedicate yourself to solving problems is by taking all the non-problems off your plate. And that's and also continuing to be responsible for and liable for everything that's going through under your name, right? So if for example, if we're automating tracking for you, we still like to keep this concept of human in the loop, which you may have heard is a common machine learning theme. It's just this idea that I don't trust the model. I don't know where the model came from. I'm sure it's fine, but like I don't fully trust the model. I don't want it making decisions for me. I want a human, a person that I actually trust, know, and understand the decision making of to actually make the decisions, because then they can go around and explain it to me. So we try to automate tasks, but not the decision, if that makes sense.
Right. Make it easier to say yes or no. Right.
That's right. I think, Casey, that's what we were talking about earlier, right? Like just the idea that like, I don't want to bid on everything. I don't want to bid on all the 100, RFPs or RFQs that I get, but I want to be able to quickly like go through them and be like, okay, yeah, is this like in my wheelhouse? Could I do this? And then, send a quote out. Same thing on tracking, right? Like I don't need an update every minute, but I want to be able to, get updates when it's relevant or send updates back to my shipper when it's relevant. So that's, that decision-making process has to sit in the hand of a person you trust.
Yeah. Prioritize and execute. It's got me thinking back to Jocko Willink. Just percolate the things up to the top of the pile that kind of make the most sense, and put yourself in a position to execute. It's cool. I think that what you guys are doing, what folks are doing to meet the market where they are with tech and kind of this 2.0 freight tech wave. That's kind of what I've been calling it. But it seems like a lot of it lives in the inbox, right? I mean, like you got to be integrated with your tech into the inbox, into maybe even SMS or Google Chat to really kind of help the market. And I think, right, I mean, it's just so segmented. However many million trucks on the road, everybody's got a phone, right? So, might as well figure out a way to meet the folks there.
Yeah. I think we were talking about this on Tech Bro Tuesday a little bit, right? Like there's just this core segment of tasks that continue to happen in the inbox because no one else has been able to build a network effect with their tools. And you're starting to see an unbundling of, your TMS will always be your source of truth and your system of record. You want everything to live there. You want your TMS to be fully updated and ready to go. But to be able to do that, you need to sync places. You need to sync the data into it, right? Whether that's coming from Farelanes, whether that's coming from your inbox, whether that's coming from anything else, you need to be able to have a path to get funnel all that information into your TMS. And I think that's probably and there's a few companies that are doing similar things, but that's like the unique insight that we've had.
Yeah. You guys work with Revenova, right? Revenova is built on top of Salesforce. It seems to be like a CRM or a model that would allow you to capture as much of that communication going on as possible. I mean, I guess there's so many points of communication, right? Like you got to figure out what the rate is, and then you got to figure out how to communicate that, plus or minus, your margins, whatever they be, back to the customer, and then kind of record that transaction or that communication in the TMS. But I think you were mentioning on Tech Bro Tuesday, like maybe TMS isn't the end all be all, one-stop shop where you're going to spend 100% of your time as a freight broker, right? Like you got to use Google Chat, right? You got to use Google Meets to find the carriers and things like that. So conceptually, it's a cool idea to have everything in the TMS, but practically, maybe it's just not a reality of, this brave new world we're living in.
Yeah, and I think, there are some TMSs that are extremely modern and really good at what they do. They genuinely are ahead of the curve, but they're not. But 40% of the larger brokers, actually, Kevin, this is your data. 40% of the larger brokers have internal TMSs, and then of course, the market share of the McLeods and the TMWs and all of those still quite large. To the extent that not that they aren't building modern features and tools, but they have also been more than anything partnering with other tools that are out there, including ourselves.
It's really all about partnerships when it comes to TMS. Drew, I do have I want to get your advice on this because I'm starting to try to put some AI into my business, right? Integrate something to do tasks, and everyone's interested in AI and what it can do. Everyone's searching for use cases as well, and you're seeing some great AI products and uses come along. What is something that an organization should know whenever they are going to implement whatever AI it is? So they can put artificial intelligence into their system. What kind of work do they need to do to make it successful?
Very good question. Very broad question.
Well, I will say this: it means some commitment from me to actually train the model, right?
Right.
Which you just don't buy AI and it just does everything. You can just step back, right? You have to train your model on exactly how you want to use it. So what type? Describe that a little bit. It's still kind of broad, but
yeah. Well, there's, a few things to consider are just how you think about data security and management, right? Are you using a self-hosted model, or are you using something off the shelf or hosted like GPT or Anthropic or something like that? And there's no harm in using either. You just have to be making those decisions. Who has access to that data? Who has access to the training models? And then, of course, most importantly, what type of model are you using, right? Are you using an LLM that's pre-trained and maybe you don't actually need to fine tune? Maybe you don't need to deal with things like RAGs and vector databases and all that. Or are you just, are you using something like really heavy that's like internal, like that you need to actually train and model? In a situation where you're just using an LLM, you can get 95% of the way there with just some good prompt engineering. And that just takes someone sitting down and thinking about this is the input I need, this is the output I need. How can I type it out so that ChatGPT or whatever genuinely understands what I'm saying and can, run with it. And then, and then you have to ask yourself the question: do I need to be paying for an LLM for this? Because LLMs are expensive, or can I do this same task with something that's cheaper, a more traditional machine learning model, whether it's like word vectors or something like that? Things like data entry are better done with word vectors because it's faster, it's more instant, it's cheaper. Plus, I can train the model to be specific to me. So like I think there's the short version of it is there's some security questions, there's some engineering questions, but then I think they all lead into the biggest question, which is this cool or is this useful? I think there's a lot of places where people want to say they use AI,
right?
But it's just cool, not useful. I think like examples of that are data entry is really useful. I think it saves people a lot of time. But one thing that we haven't been doing, because I don't think it's like particularly useful right now, is like automatically scheduling appointment times, for example. We'll suggest times, we'll come up with like what makes sense.
Right.
I think it's cool in theory for the system to automatically go into the portal and schedule it. But do you really want the AI making that decision, or do you want a person making that decision? Do you want the human to be in the loop in that situation? And we've decided, at least at this time, like we want the human to be in the loop in that situation. We think it's cool if it would go and do it itself, but it's more useful if the person actually does it, and we suggest the times based on the information that we have. So
right.
I think that's how I'd like draw that distinction.
And maybe that, forgive my ignorance, if there resonating this question, but would that like enable a world where if you have the human in the loop, and then it has a data set, okay, these are the decisions that the human made in these scenarios. Does the AI get better in that instance and start thinking more like that human? Is there a way to, a couple of years down the line, put a couple more things on that human's plate if you still intend to keep them in the loop, or could that human, be removed from the loop at that point in time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the reality is that we're moving really rapidly towards dramatic improvements in the capabilities of this tooling and the decision making it can make. You can be much more specific nowadays about what the scope is and what the guardrails are, and create escalation paths where if the AI can't figure it out, or if the tooling can't figure it out, then only then the human will get pulled into the loop. But I think that sidesteps the question, at least in freight, which is, I still think that freight brokerages are driven by people, and that the supply chain is driven by person-to-person relationships. And so despite you wanting to automate as much as you can, you still want the person who's responsible for it at the end of the day. It's possible that you can have an ops manager who's handling 100 loads, where today maybe they can only handle 15 to 30.
Right.
But you still want that ops manager to have situational awareness of what's going on.
For sure. You guys said it earlier, right? This business is about solving problems, not if they happen, but when they happen.
It's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And the way an AI would solve a problem, yes, they can be creative, but you would still have to create the paths that they're able to be creative around.
But that's a good thing for employment and jobs of the future, is that especially if you have experience in something, right? You don't have to handle all the mundane details of it. You just you are the control tower, kind of, right? You're just sitting there solving problems instead of having to do all the manual work of actually you're diagnosing everything, right? Instead of having to actually get down into the weeds and do the tasks to actually solve the problem. You can just, I guess having an assistant is a good way to put it, right? You can just go have it done. Or am I thinking about this all the wrong way?
No, I mean the phrase that Microsoft coined. Actually, I think Microsoft coined it, Copilot. Right? That's what they've been calling
Right.
it. Copilot, sidebar, like that kind of thing. I think that's where you want to go. That's the direction you want to take it. I think, like, you know, I'm seeing Marcus's comment here. I think absolutely right. You want people to be comfortable with not only the results, but also the new workflow, right? The new way of working. Like, we are all used to, now more and more people are getting used to, hey, I'm traveling to Puerto Rico. Let me ask ChatGPT for some recommendations.
Yes.
Kind of
did that earlier this week.
There you go, right? There you go. But that's a new thing, you know? That's not a and that's not something that everyone does. That's just what the tech savvy folks like us, or, you know, might be able to do. And even then, I'm still spending all my time on TripAdvisor because I didn't totally trust ChatGPT's recommendation.
Right.
So if you're so theoretically, hypothetically, let's put that way, I get a job in freight. I could get my own AI tool.
Yeah.
Do 95% of the work for me.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, right? And do 5% of it and still draw a check every 2 weeks. Theoretically.
I don't know about 95 on a good day, 95%, I think.
Say 80%.
Yeah.
80%, right?
And I think the reality is that as that becomes more and more of the norm, you'll just get more and more work. And we've seen that repeatedly. Like, people, you know, every time there's a new technology that comes out, the dishwasher came out, right? Like, and people are talking about, you know, we'll all be out of jobs. Restaurants are going to shut down. It's just going to be vending machines. Like, yeah, like vending machines exist and all of that. And I'm seeing, you know, robots that put together Chipotle bowls and stuff like that. But, like, that just means now we have more time to, like, do other things.
Right. Like, yeah, it's funny. That's like the inverse of, like, you know, Moore's law and like clock speed just getting faster in computers, you know, exponentially, is humans need to increase their clock speed as well, right? And be more efficient to provide that, you know, fuel for the economy, right? We gotta grow.
We have more leisure, more productivity. We have more leisure and more productivity in our lives today than we ever have ever. And so that's, I mean, I think that's just a sign of, like, this is just how technology goes. Like, this one's, I think AI is a little bit more scary, a little bit more all-encompassing. And, you know, we've all seen iRobot and things like that, Terminator, whatever. But, like, actually, I haven't seen either of those movies. I don't know why I said that.
You never seen Terminator?
Dude, I just never came up.
Oh, you have to.
I know.
That's one of those things.
Yeah.
One of those things everyone should watch is Terminator, especially now, because now people get Skynet. You know, that the Skynet reference. And since you work in freight, you have to watch Smokey and the Bandit. I don't know if you've watched it yet.
You're right.
Yeah, it was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on there, but if you work in transportation and logistics, you have to watch Smokey and the Bandit.
Yep. Yeah.
Requirement.
Requirement.
It really is. It's a requirement.
It's required reading. Yeah.
It's required reading. Yes.
I still haven't seen it yet, Drew. Maybe we can watch that together in Vegas this weekend.
Let's do a honeymoon watch party. That sounds good.
You should.
Yeah.
But anyways, maybe I know you got a hard stop here in 5, but I don't know. The conversation here on AI is kind of begging a question for me. Drew, would love to know, how do we make sure that AI is a technology that, you know, we continue to have, you know, working for us to become more efficient, as opposed to becoming, you know, a tool for AI, you know, when it reaches a point where it's, you know, can do everything,
self-aware
and more. You whatever the technical term for that is. It's escaping me right now. The singularity.
Okay,
right?
so it's how do we make AI work for us instead of taking
Work
control of the earth and turning us into slave labor for the Skynet overlords? Is that another way to phrase it, Casey?
Exactly. I think that's
All right.
right where I was trying to go.
Look, I have seen The Matrix, so how do you know it hasn't already happened? I mean, like,
True.
No, I mean, look, I'm not a deep AI technical researcher. You'd have to ask my co-founder this. He's got a PhD in data privacy and all of this stuff. A literal PhD. It's very cool. But I think just the reality is like code is usually and almost always predictable. And as long as we are building the right guardrails around tools, and as long as I think the fundamental baseline data behind these things and models are in the right hands, then we can probably sleep soundly. Obviously, that's a big if, and there's even turmoil in those spaces, right? Even just yesterday, the former CTO, I think he was the CTO of OpenAI, split off and started a new company that's specifically focused on building safe superintelligence. I think the company is literally called Safe Superintelligence Inc. or something, which is, that is to say, he doesn't trust the other folks building those models.
That sounds like a company name in a comic book.
It does, right? It does sound like, yeah.
And I saw something about Elon trying to build a Grok supercomputer somewhere in the middle of the country as well.
Yeah. I think Michael Dell tweeted that Dell is building in partnership with NVIDIA,
right?
One of the largest supercomputers in the world with, for Tesla and all of that.
So that brings up another question. I know we don't have enough time to get into it. I wish we did. Actually, is quantum computing?
Yeah.
Which kind of is a supercomputer, right? But quantum computing, and if that ever comes out, then what do we do?
Yeah, well, first of all of our security protocols are gone, right? Anything, just the fundamental like RSA and all of those, like the reason they work is because you'd have to try every combination. It would take you decades to do it. Quantum can do that instantly. Look, quantum to me, this is a hot take, and I don't want to shade any of the quantum researchers, but it feels a little bit like nuclear fusion, where it was like, they said it would be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 5 years from now, 10 years ago. Same with self-driving, all of those. I don't know. It all feels like one of those things where it's like, it's gonna happen, but it's probably a while from now. I will say on self-driving though, I was in a cruise in San Francisco and it's magic. Oh my God, it's crazy. Yeah. It is. It works, man. It really does. At least in those conditions that are, they're tight, but I think they're more favorable than like your Manhattan winter or something like that. But that works.
I think Gaddick's been doing some cool stuff in the last mile space. I haven't heard from them either, but
I haven't either. Well, Drew, thanks so much for dropping by, and you know what? For anyone out there looking to learn more about Axle and what you guys are doing, where do they go? Casey had the website up a while ago, but what is that website address? How does anyone contact you directly?
Yeah, axleapi.com, axleapi.com, or find me on LinkedIn, Dhruv Gupta. Not easy to spell, but you'll find me. You'll get there. Yeah. Please just reach out directly. We love talking to folks. We love our partners, like the folks at Farelanes, and are always happy to help advise. If not, check out our product.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for dropping by, and yeah.
Really appreciate. Oh, partners like Farelanes and of course BrushPass. Please check that out as well. But yeah, really appreciate it, y'all. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.
See you, Drew.
All right, Casey, what is this? The Farelanes article?
Farelanes
What am I looking at?
blog. Check it out. Got some cool articles up here. And then what's your website URL, Kev?
It's brushpassresearch.blog.
That
is where.
blog. Ooh,
There we go.
pretty.
There we go. And this is how much technical ability I have. I've been trying to insert my emails subscribe to my emails in this. I can't figure it out.
Oh,
So, but with that, I have a lot of free research on there, trying to get some credit data uploaded to map out the credit statuses of about 1,500 freight brokerages. And so hopefully that might be up later on today. Who knows?
very cool.
Who knows?
Later today. Maybe there's somebody in the audience that can help you set up a subscribe here button with
I know, right? You think it'd be really easy, but for whatever reason, it's just not working out.
Well, cool, man.
Yeah. So any parting thoughts?
Yeah, man. We're more than halfway through the year. As always, the only way out is through. Work smarter, not harder, and have a happy Thursday.
Yeah, halfway through the year. This is almost there. And my only advice is, if you work in transportation and logistics and you haven't seen Smoking the Bandit, you have to go watch it. The dialogue is still as crisp and clean as it was back then. It was the second most popular movie of that year. The first one, Star Wars.
Huh.
Yeah, came back. I mean, it's like almost 50 years old now, and it is great. Burt Reynolds in his prime, Jackie Gleason at the end. But yeah, so cool.
Let the truckers truck, baby.
Let the truckers truck. We will see you again next Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Time.
Yes, we will. See y'all.